Hi there, I'm Olja, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a tulle skirt. I'll share with you how to tailor and sew this fabulous skirt, whether you're going for a shorter version or full length to the floor version. Either way, you will be surprised how easy it is to make it. Even if you're new to sewing, yes, you can absolutely make this always fashionable and just stunning skirt. So stick with me because I will have an extra surprise for you at the end of this video. Some really cool styling ideas that will make your skirt suitable for many different occasions. Welcome folks, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I'd be really happy if you find it useful. If you haven't been on my YouTube channel before or my blog pages yet, let me just quickly introduce myself. Well, the blog and this YouTube channel, as well as my other social media channels, are following my personal experiences involving some serious home renovations and DIY projects and the designs that I developed myself. I also design and make hand-knitted, entirely handcrafted mixed media fashion jewelry, and you will see some of the pieces featured in the announced styling ideas for this skirt towards the end of the video. And skills? Well, just about 5 years ago I knew nothing about all this, but then I bought my first house, a fixer-upper house, and then 15 days after that I lost my marketing job in financial services. Why life, why? But now I know why, for the better. Because I discovered my new passions and talent. I learned to do all this from refurbishing the furniture and sewing to, tiling and sanding the walls. I started doing this to save money for all the work that needed to be done on the house, but then it turned into pure love. Oh, and by the way, I learned how to sew and I desired to have custom-made curtains for all the windows in my house. And once I conquered that, naturally, I started sewing garments, which has something to do with my love for fashion, and here we are. I just love saving money by doing stuff myself, and I really enjoy that rewarding feeling once I see my project wonderfully completed. I like to think of myself then as of a supermaster genius. So if you think we have something in common, just subscribe right here or head over to my website and leave your email subscription there. But right now, let's talk about the tulle skirt. Here we go, guys. To make this skirt, we are going to need two types of fabric. The first one that will serve as an underlayer or the base, on top of which will come the second one in several layers, the tulle fabric of course. We will also need elastic for the waist, the matching thread, and one extra thing, a piece of a bias tape for the top layer of the skirt. For this navy blue maxi skirt, I bought about 2.5 meters of satin fabric for the base and then 10 meters of tulle fabric. Both come as 150 centimeters width, which is about 60 inches. For the short black skirt, I got about half of this because with this width, I got double the fabric. I also bought 3 meters of bias tape. However, the total amount of fabric and bias tape will depend on a few things. Your measurement, then the length of the skirt you're going for, and then the fullness and the number of layers you would like to have. Just keep watching and I'll show you exactly what I measured and which decisions I took. It will help you when planning for your skirt. Let's take some measurements first. Measure your waist, then the hips. The waist casing that will hold the elastic needs to pass the hips, so definitely have this measured. Mark the comfortable measures, not super tight ones. And then finally, measure the length of the skirt that you would like to have. Write everything down. I can only function if I visualize everything for myself, so that's what I'll be doing along the way. Now this is a little bit boring part, but setting up the right dimensions is the key. Working with the numbers that you have, for the base, in my case here for the satin fabric, take the measurement of the waist and multiply it by at least 2 or 3 times. I rounded mine to about 2 meters, which is just under the 3 times. The more time you multiply it, the more fullness you will get, but my recommendation would be to get more fullness from layering the tulle fabric rather than bumping up the base. Multiplying it by 3 is a good number. Next, decide about the tulle layers. Aim to have at least 3 layers if possible. Both skirts shown here were made that way. I started the first tulle layer in dimensions just a little bit more than what I had for the base, and then I increased each new layer for a bit more than the previous one, where the last layer is the top layer and is the widest one. You're seeing my dimensions here, but you can come up with your own depending on how much tulle you have available. To expand the measurements here, it would mean adding the fullness. So if you're really going for that fluffy, pumped up look, this is the place to take care of that. So go crazy, have fun with it, but have one thing in mind. With a full-length skirt, adding fullness can also get pricey by having to buy more tulle. One thing to mention, the last layer I split in two parts, the top part and the bottom part, which you should once again increase in measurement than the previous one and make the incremental here the biggest yet. The bottom part of the third layer I increased even more than the top part of the same layer. To cut the first piece of fabric, and let us start from the first layer, the base, let's take the calculated measurements for the waist plus add a little extra for the seam allowance, about 5/8 of an inch, and that will be our width. So in my case, I'm marking a little over 2 meters and cutting. I'm sorry, I'm talking a bit in meters and then in inches, but that's just how my brain works after hopping the continents. Bear with me, I'll convert everything for you so there's no confusion. After that first cut, mark the length that you're going for, but must not forget the seam allowance. So for the top part of the skirt, you will need to add to your length about 5/8 of an inch, that's sort of a standard. But for the bottom, you need to decide what kind of finish you want. You can still just fall under 5/8 of an inch again, that's one way to go, or you can make it a bit more professionally finished and go for 5/8 of an inch for one fold, plus do another fold for over an inch, which is what I did here. Or as a third option, if you're working with the fabric that doesn't fray, like for example some stretchy knits, you may go without any fold nor seam on the bottom. Do your desired calculations and cut the length. Next up is the tulle cutting. Again, go back to your waist calculations for the rest of the layers. Start measuring one by one and start cutting. The length of the tulle we'll cut later. Tulle can be really hard to maneuver, especially if you're doing the full length as I'm doing here, so I found it easier to do it on the floor. Just clean your floors good before you start. And if you have straight edges carpet, it can be an awesome guide for straight cutting. Go slow, have patience, and don't forget to mark each cut layer, because in the pile of tulle you will not know which is which. As for the last layer, the third layer, the outer one that comes in two parts, I did cut it in two parts by measuring 2/3 of the full length of the skirt for the length of the top part, and then leaving the bottom part, the length for the bottom part, to be measured and cut later on. Just keep watching. Transferring to the sewing machine now. When doing folds, pressing always helps, and I'll start with the bottom edge of the base fabric. So I'm folding and pressing 5/8 of an inch and folding in again a little over an inch. I'm pinning it all and taking it to my sewing machine to be top stitched. Next, I will do that one side seam that will create sort of a tube of our base fabric. I almost always use so-called French seam to finish my seams. It just looks so neat and tidy inside and out, but you don't have to. However, if your fabric does fray, you do need to finish your seam somehow, and just press it after you're done sewing. Now you have the finished base at the desired length plus the seam allowance for the top of the skirt. And now it's a good time to align your first and the second tulle layer to this base and trim the length to match exactly. We are not going to be folding the tulle on a bottom, but we will need that seam allowance for the top of the skirt. So this is why I thought that in this step it's the best to, decide the final length of the tulle and trim it. Just lay your base straight, lay the tulle on top of it, aligning one side on top of the base and cutting extra following the bottom edge of the base. Take your time, do this slowly, but don't work on the third layer of the tulle, the one that comes in two parts. We'll tackle that later. Next up, with your sewing machine, sew that one side seam on the two layers of the tulle and make those really big tulle tubes, just like we did for the base. I did French seam again, it just looks nicer, but you don't have to. Tulle doesn't frame, simple seam is okay. Just make sure to turn it to the inside when building the skirt later on. Up to now we have finished the base tube and 2 full tulle tubes, and now it's time to connect them together. Take all the tubes, base and tulle, and on its top, where the waist is going to be, mark 4 equal spots. First is obvious, the seam. Then decide the rest by folding tubes in half. Place pins and be sure to jam them better in tulle fabric because they can fall out easily. Hopefully this illustration will help you better understand. Take the tulle tubes to your sewing machine and with different color thread, baste along the top edge of the tube. Make sure to not lock the thread when basting and to definitely make a stop and a new start at each marking point. Now use those not locked loose threads to gather and distribute tulle equally while matching the 4 markings of the tulle to 4 markings of the base. So sort of put on or dress on the first tulle layer over the right side of the base, which means wrong side of the tulle, where the seam is, it's facing the right side of the base. Match and join together 4 markings on both base and tulle and keep adjusting the tulle, pulling or releasing the basting, and keep pinning the 2 fabrics together. Take it to the sewing machine and sew it in place. This time, locking the thread as you would normally do. Repeat the entire process with the second tulle tube. Before we continue, let's take a few seconds break. I wanted to tell you how I came up with an idea to make this skirt or these skirts. Well, I didn't, my sister did. We live apart, unfortunately, and every time I go back home to Europe to see my family and friends, we always have the best time. And just not long ago, I was there and we attended the wedding of our dear friend. So my sister actually asked me to make her a short black tulle skirt for that wedding. And she knows I miss her all so much and that I do anything for her. And she's using me to do for her every time I go there because she knows I won't say no. She's been paining my butt all my life. No, you were not. So anyway, I got on it, I figured it out, and I made the skirt. And you know, it was a showstopper at the wedding and at any other event that she wore it afterwards. People started asking her where she bought it, how she made it, and I also fell in love with it, but I kind of imagined that the full-length skirt would be even prettier. So I've decided to make one for myself as a full length and also to record it for all of you. And you know what's gonna happen now? My sister's gonna flip out once she sees this one, and most likely she's gonna beg me to make one for her as well. Well, I can tell you one thing, sis. Here's the tutorial so you can make it yourself. I love you! Continuing with the make of the skirt now. The third layer of the tulle is to be addressed next. Take its top part first and insert its bottom edge in bias tape and sew in place all around. So if you remember, we didn't cut the length of the bottom part of the third tulle layer because now is a good time to do it and be more precise. Take your so far finished skirt, which is the base, with the 2 tulle layers sewn in, and slip it on the ironing board. I found this to be easiest to maneuver with. Then place the top part of the third tulle layer, which now has the bias tape sewn on, by aligning it to the top edge of the skirt and lie it flat. Now you can easily measure the length of the missing bottom part, taking in the entire size of the bias tape as well, because this is where we will make the connection. The bottom part will go under the bias tape of the top part, and that way it will be invisibly added. Again, I found my geometrical carpet very helpful to mark and cut along the measured length for the last bottom part of the tulle. Now we're going to do exactly what we did with the previous tubes, mark both parts in 4, except this time we are doing it first for the bottom edge of the top part where the bias tape is and the top edge of the bottom part. We are going to connect these together first. Baste the top edge of the bottom part, but try using the same thread color to make it look invisible, so you don't need to worry about removing basting thread after, because that would be such a pain to remove out of the tulle. And on this joint spot, any other color thread might actually be visible. Once you've done that, match 4 markings of that edge to the 4 markings along the bias tape of the top part by sliding it under the bias tape so that it is sewn in as in the wrong side of the last third tulle layer that we will get now. Have patience, adjust basting and pin in place. On the sewing machine, top stitch the 2 parts together following the existing stitch line on the bias tape. And there, the third tulle tube is now done and can be put on the rest of the skirt. Do everything as we did before with each layer when we were joining them together. Once you sew it all together in place, sew it one more time just to reinforce it. Take the skirt that you made so far, which is the base plus all the layers of the tulle, by folding its top edge to make those 4 markings again. On your sewing machine, choose settings for very loose and long thread, which you will use for basting now. Considering that bunch of layers you need to go through are pretty thick now, and you want to be able to easily gather it all on a basting thread. Also choose visibly different color for the basting. Baste in 4 days like we did before. Now we need the fabric for the waistline to attach to the skirt and to run the elastic through. For the width, you will take your hip measurement and add seam allowance on each side. For the length, measure your elastic, multiply by 2, and also add seam allowance on top and bottom. Measure, mark, cut 2 pieces of this fabric, which will be the fabric you used for the base of the skirt. With the wrong sides together, sew in both side seams, open them flat and press. On your new little tube for the waistline, fold in seam allowance on the edge and press. The opposite edge, the one that is not folded, mark in 4 again and dress it over the skirt, matching right sides together and making connections at 4 markings first. Then by pulling the basting thread on the skirt, gather the top edge of the skirt and adjust to look even and pin to the edge of the waistline fabric. Take time to do this. Now take it all to the sewing machine. Don't forget to take back your settings there and sew this in place. Go slow, then do it one more time and trim any excess fabric and thread. We're almost there. Fold the waistline fabric to the inside and match the fold line to where you see the stitches on the skirt. Pin it all around, making sure all closes in perfectly, and then slip stitch the fold to the skirt by hand, leaving the opening to thread the elastic in. Do not start doing slip stitch before you really pin it all around, because after a few steps your stitch may start to skew a bit and your waistline might end up looking distorted on one side. Just pin it first and no worries. What is left to do is to measure the elastic to what feels comfortable on your waist, leaving a little extra for stitching. Pass it through the waistline, which may not go as smooth like in my case because I didn't leave any wiggle room in a waist-like casing, which is on purpose. I wanted to minimize the amount of creased fabric in the final look and also to not allow the elastic to twist inside while putting it on and taking it off. So take your time, keep passing the elastic in little by little and adjusting it at the same time. Once all is in, take both ends of the elastic, make sure it's not twisted anywhere inside, and sew it together. Now adjust the elastic back to the inside of the casing, and lastly, slip stitch the opening we used to thread the elastic in. Your skirt is done. Looking fabulous and timeless. I think it will always be in fashion. Oh my gosh, you guys, how accomplished do you feel? Like a super master genius? Just wait until somebody asks you where you got it. And as promised, let me give you some styling ideas on how to wear this skirt in different ways. As you saw, this outfit at the beginning of the episode, definitely my favorite, will go well for some formal events, but not quite, let's say, a business attire formal. Imagine it to wear at some art event or, for example, at a fashion show, which is exactly where I went dressed like this. I love the complete opposites clashing. So soft and feminine vibes of the tulle and a statement necklace on one side, and then the sharpness of the motto jacket and booties, sharpened even more by men fashion flare coming from the tie and a formal shirt on the other side. I also find this incredibly sexy. While some people would go for it by buttoning it down, I think the secret is in buttoning up actually. The next two outfits are kind of casual, and I totally see them suitable for some girls-only gatherings, nights out and talks over drinks, or weekend brunches. And again, I went for opposites in choosing casual tops. In this one, I wanted to show you how a thick knitted sweater, slightly draping over the skirt, can look so great together with something as delicate as tulle. Balance it off with sturdier boots, but pretty enough to complement the skirt. And balance the skirt with a piece of jewelry, showcasing here one of my designs. For the other casual outfit, I thought why not try mixing some play with the tulle. So I put on this lovely shirt, although jeans shirt would go well also. I followed the style with some cowboyish looking boots, but toned down in color. And once again, I completed it all with one of the Sgravali necklaces from my online shop. And for the ending of this video, something dressier, something perhaps you would wear to a cocktail party or so. I styled this one to complement the skirt. I sort of played along and continued pairing it with the other delicate pieces, like this lovely see-through velvet body top, which makes the perfect background to super feminine, another one of mine hand-knitted masterpieces of jewelry. No boots here, picked lovely open sandals in nude shade to add to all the delicacy. There you go, folks. I hope you got inspired, informed, and ready to make your own fashion. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to my channel here, and also head over to my website at sgravali.com and sign up there as well, so you'll always be notified whenever I launch something new. All additional info and links, including the link to my online jewelry shop, is right down below this video. You have something to add, share, or ask, just put it all down there in the comment box. I'll get you next time. Bye! Up to now, we have finished the base tube and two full tubes. I really am master in writing the script. Online jewelry shop is just right down below this video. Can't do it anymore.